Okay, welcome everybody to Strange Universe, and we are doing a kind of a new thing called Red Thread Connections. And Red Thread Connections is just about people that through space, through time, they've the sage is going, they've somehow come into communication. They get to meet one another along this path and help each other in that process. So it started out as kind of a love story between two people in China, and they tied a little thread to each other's finger, and they were supposed to meet each other as soulmates. And it's kind of expanded to people in the spiritual community, soul tribe members that just come into contact with one another. And so today I have Candice Ryan Reiki here. Very excited for this. As I was going through my spiritual awakening and through the dark night of the soul and trying to figure out who I was I the past? Was I who I currently incarnate, or am I something that I can be in the future? During those moments of doubt, I would go on YouTube, and this lady is one of the ones who constantly, and I mean constantly, sent a message directly into my soul, gave me hope and faith to kind of keep moving. So I just want to say, Candice, I really do appreciate you. I've told you that before. You are a bright and shining light, and I am so grateful to have you here today.
I feel so honored and um, grateful as well. I mean, it's just it feels nice to be chosen to do something, you know. So, and like you said, it is very much needed for us to have conversations with each other. And I often talk to myself in my camera for my videos, so it's exciting to get to have a conversation with somebody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say, like, I left a comment. I come to your video sometimes just for the cosmic giggle. I call it the cosmic giggle because when you talk, you will just have this little giggle, and it's so funny because I'll be watching the video and then I'll start giggling too. So I think that's such a great thing. So we're going to get into just trying to figure out a little bit about you, a little bit about your journey. You've always kind of identified as a spiritual being. Is there something in your past that kind of awakened that process to you? You are a Reiki healer, but you also did some medicine woman work, which is fascinating. And I was just wondering, with your mother-in-law, and I was just wondering a little bit about your past, how you got to where you are, and what that was like.
Yeah, so I've always felt a very deep connection to spirit and have, for some reason, I guess it was because I chose to come here and be conscious through my experience, even as a young child, right? So I just would see this experience from a much larger, more broad scope, right? And I could just recognize the patterns and kind of see deeper meanings behind things. And through my life, I would test, I guess, this inner knowing by striking up conversations with people about things that I do, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be really interested at how I knew certain things, right? And some of it was pattern recognition, and some of it was just an inner knowing. And I think between those two, using your logic and your intuition, you can, form or learn to discern your way through this experience. But I like to say that the medicine journey, I didn't choose it, like it chose me.
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so I, as a child, even was really interested in massage work. And I would set up, at daycare, my own little massage booth, at the top of the slide. So the kids had to come up the ladder, and would make them lay down. I would sit down on their butts and I would do massage and like just touch them and just love on them and then shoot them down the slide. And I had a line of kids. So even from childhood, I had a desire to make people feel good, right? And through that, whenever I met my ex-mother-in-law, she recognized this desire within me. And she too was a massage therapist. She was a Reiki master, a master herbalist, medicine woman. So she was already within that um, community, right? And she saw my desire, like I said, my eagerness to learn more and expand. So I started out with the massage therapy, and that was kind of her testing me, right? She's like, "Oh, you're interested in massage. Are you going to pursue that?" So I got my massage license, and she's like, "Okay, well, do you want to just be a massage therapist, or do you want to be a healer?" Right? And she put no pressure on me. She gave me plenty of time to think about it, but I didn't really have to think about it. I already knew. What I wanted to do was so much more than just physical body work, right? But that was you know, the avenue in which I took to reach people and physically touch people, because I do have that gift, right? The hands-on healing. And so that's where the Reiki comes in, because if you can incorporate the Reiki energy healing with the massage therapy, um, you're really able to access deeper layers of the body, not just the physical body, but emotional and mental body and your spiritual body, right? Your energetic body. So that's kind of how it all started. I just liked doing massage. I liked making people feel good. I had a desire to uplift and just do something big, and it was just written inside of me, I guess. Do something, leave some type of an imprint. And
Yeah,
why not leave a positive imprint,
absolutely.
So, like I
Yeah,
said, it called me. I didn't I didn't necessarily choose it. It just was my life.
yeah, and that connection, I think, between mind and body. And I'm sorry, the dog that is back there, he never barks, and he is barking right now. So I think he's feeling your energy. But um, the mind and the body, it's an interesting thing. I want to stay there for a second, because there is things I've read, like, the body keeps the score, and all these different types of books that talk about how we can trap trauma, we can trap stress, we can trap anxiety, we can trap all kinds of different things within the body. And I think people often think that the body is somehow separate from the spirit or the soul or our experience, and really it's not. And so I think it's kind of interesting. Maybe you can go into that just a little bit, about that connection between the body and energy, and how that process flows.
Okay, so from my understanding, I was taught that the bodies are all existing within one, field, and it's kind of like layers. That's why I feel like Shrek considered himself to be an ogre. Maybe he understood that there were layers to his being, and our physical body is one of those layers, right? So when you have emotional traumas, mental programmings, or, lack mindset, fear based mindsets, and traumas, they get stored in whichever body, right? And whenever, let's say it's your emotional body, right? You have some emotional trauma and it gets repressed, or it stays there and creates a stagnancy in your energy flow, then it can manifest into your mental body, right? Then you start having mind chatter, is what I call was taught to call it, mind chatter, And then if you don't address these things in the mental and emotional body, they will manifest in your physical body as dis-ease, right? And it's that lack of ease, that lack of flow in your bodies.
Mm.
And so that was one thing that I did enjoy about doing massage. I did it for 16 years and I retired from that. So I'm like, I'm done with that. Um, but the layers of the bodies are so important. So that's where the energy work, the healing work, you know, being incorporated in the physical body is so wonderful and impactful and incredibly healing.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so you also, on top of being a massage therapist, you're dealing with Reiki, working with energy, you're also helping people like myself on YouTube. And I hear you say a lot that you are an earth angel. And I think a lot of people are kind of waking up to, they're sort of pulling out of the matrix and recognizing that, hey, being born, kind of growing up, going to school, being part of the machine, getting the job, getting the wife, getting the picket fence, that's what existence is. And then you retire. And then shortly after that, you I get go wherever it is that people believe they go. But you say that you are an earth angel, and to those people that sort of are awakening to the process that there is more, what is an earth angel? If you could explain that, what does it mean to you? And how did you know that, and how are you using that to help people?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I love that. Um, so to me, being an earth angel means just being a very highly evolved spiritual being, angelic being having this human experience, to put it simply.
Yeah.
And within that, we all have our own experiences. But what I've found is that there are certain souls who agree to come here from an angelic realm who have, from my own personal experience and my own understanding, have gained wings throughout other lives, right?
Mm.
And can exist or have ascended to higher levels of, dimensions, being able to basically ascend. It's almost like ascended masters, right? You
Mm-hmm.
ascend to the angelic realms, and then you get to come back here and experience more. Or in a time like this, you come in and get to experience and embody what the Christ consciousness and um, just embodying the unconditional love that exists in those realms, right? So the way that that would look a lot of times are people end up being healers of some sort, or they're just that type of person that people naturally open up to and feel healed by simple conversations and interactions, right?
Mm.
So that's one thing. I feel like there was another part of that question I missed.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, again, as certain people are waking up, how would they know? My own journey was a long journey. I started reading certain books, and uh, Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and Pema Chodron and Marianne Williamson and just all these different types of books. And there were all these concepts that were really, really foreign to me, but they seemed to hold truth to them. And so for people that are going through that process, that are slowly, intaking information, and they see within themselves, hey, maybe I am meant to live a different life. How would they know? What types of signs would they have that this process is happening, that they were an earth angel, that they were someone that can shine their light and help other people, and how do so there's it's I know it's kind of a convoluted question, but
Yeah,
there's that
I get you.
process, and then there's the process of what you're doing with it, because it sounds like, I don't know if it's similar to like the bodhisattva in the Buddhist tradition, of somebody that ascends, gets a level of higher consciousness, and then makes a decision to come back, sort of like Plato's allegory of the cave. Instead of just awakening and then I'm off and I'm going to do my thing, someone who actually awakens, and then they say, I can't, I have to go back and I have to help.
Yeah.
So again, please forgive me. It's a little bit of a convoluted question, and I have so many questions, and I think I think the monkey mind is just going nuts. But if you could try to follow along, I would really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So I think number one, I don't believe in coincidences. So I feel that if somebody comes across any type of content or information that leads them to believe that, to come to that conclusion, then I don't see a coincidence in that.
Mhm.
As much content as there is available for people, that is, something that only resonates with certain people. And so it's like if you come across this information and it resonates with you, then it's for you. You know, that's what I truly believe. And I've seen it happen for myself too, you know.
Mhm.
So I think that that is like the first step, is just seeing that, okay, this resonates with me, and this is where you start to ignite your intuition. If it's something that's new for you, you're like, oh, what is this feeling? I feel so deeply inside of me, in my soul, that this message is for me. And so a lot of it has to do with learning to discern what is your programming and what is your soul trying to when is your soul trying to communicate, and when is it your programming? Because your mind's going to tell you, oh, this is baloney, there's no way I'm this, I'm not anybody special. And that almost is a really great place to start, because then you're coming at it from a place of humility and being humble, right? So so thinking that you're a nobody isn't a bad place to start, really, truly, in from my experience. And then realizing, oh wow, I'm not the character or the avatar or the vessel in which I am placed in at this moment. I'm not this perspective. I'm so much more, you know? And so then the tricky part and the whole wild ride about it is realizing that you're the soul having this human experience, and then trying to live your life knowing that you're a soul having this human experience, and so that's what makes it fun. And I could go into my personal perspective on how this experience is supposed to be experienced, and also based on the messages that I've channeled in. And so if you're interested in that, I would, you know, like to expand on that. But yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to mute my mic when if the dog starts barking.
Yeah,
So
you're fine. I
you see me
honestly
roll my
can't
head.
hear them.
Oh, okay. Well, then hopefully people can't hear. But yeah, please do kind of explain that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the way that spirit has explained it to me is that, this place was created for us to come and experience and learn, and just have this wonderful environment to experience and expand consciousness, right? And so within the original construct, we would be able to come here and be in alignment and exist, coexist as our vessel and our higher selves in one, being conscious creators and being conscious and aware of our experience, so that as we move throughout our experience, we are able to learn the lessons that we desire to come here, you know so spirit was basically like, when people talk about how, the matrix or whatever, and it's a simulation. And so basically, within that, if you look at it from that perspective, within that there would be coding put in there to kind of cap people on their ability to come in from birth and be conscious as their higher self, as their soul, living in this human experience, and actually being able to experience what it is that their soul truly desires, right? So that is why the earth angels, the chosen ones, the 144, spiritual warriors, however people want to label it, that's what we're here for, is to basically rewrite these codes simply by existing as conscious creators. And this, and people say the veil is lifting, things are shifting, and really spirit is just like we're shifting back into the original construct in which this place is meant to exist, which is come in as your higher self, have the experiences, learn the lessons, and don't get caught in these karmic loops and cycles that we get caught in here, right? And people talk about how it's a soul trap and you get trapped, and it's because we're not consciously aware of our karmic lessons that we're supposed to be working through, right? And if you're not aware and you don't learn it in this life because you're not conscious and in alignment with your soul, then you're going to have to you get stuck in this loop, right? So that's what we're here for, is basically to break these patterns and cycles by experiencing them, which makes the walk so difficult because we have to actually do these things. We have to actually have these experiences as humans to be able to transmute this energy and rewrite the codes within the matrix.
Okay, so what I'm getting is that basically we're coming from somewhere else. We're coming back here. We have a series of things that we're trying to figure out. And we have these choices that we have to make, to choose love or to choose fear, right? To be caught in the soul trap, which is fear, 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 news and what's going on over there, and really keeping us out of the real work, which is the internal work of rewriting our own code. And then somehow that code then nodes off to other codes. And so you have this simultaneous disease that's happening and this cure that's trying to solve it. And we're all it's wild because we're all in this unconscious state, right? And we've forgotten, and then now we have to remember. And I always like to say, like in a lot of my videos, I'll say remembering is really just coming back together to remember, right?
Yes.
And so this leads me into what you were saying a little bit earlier, which was that these are the messages that you get. So you also channel some messages.
Yes.
Yeah,
Actually, Spirit was just laughing at me right now as you said that because I just had a download. I get downloads.
yeah, share.
Um, yeah, so I never looked at the word remember in the context in which you just described it. I've never That's a concept to me it that never occurred until just this moment. And Spirit is laughing. I'm laughing at myself too because my medicine name is She Who Remembers.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, because I was thinking it had to do with my memory. And of course, that has a
yeah.
huge amount to do with it, right? Because I remember everything. And I have remembering, I guess, the ancient codes and the ancient information that's already within inside of me. So whenever I channel, it's like I gain access in certain moments to higher realms of, I guess, information, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it for me, it is the intellect and the intuition working together because I
Mm-hmm.
had to physically experience this, right? And learn, okay, this information just popped into my head and I don't think I've ever learned it before. How do I know this?
Yeah.
And start asking yourself those questions. So it's like getting information, and then, like I said, for me personally, I had experienced receiving downloads from an early age. And so I've been able to test and practice these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a huge example that is
Mm-hmm.
crazy, right? So my biological dad was not present in my life. I had another dad that adopted me, and nobody told me that he wasn't my dad. And I started having these feelings like I should be meeting my real dad. Like I had a real dad out there. And I was like, where is this coming from? And one day I was watching a talk show, Mari, and they were having these young ladies, teenagers, preteens, I was 12 at the time, meeting their biological fathers for the first time. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt such this magnetic pull and draw to be on that stage with these young ladies meeting their biological fathers, right? And so instead of keeping that information to myself, I wanted to test, you know, my experience in my environment. So I went to my mother that day and I asked her, and she didn't have to say anything. Me simply just asking her, she turned pale, like she saw a ghost, and just started crying, you know?
Mm.
And she's like, "How did you know that? Like, what the heck? What possessed you to ask me this question?" You know, and I had to tell her, I knew it. I don't know how I know it. I just knew it. And then not only did I know something, but I felt something
Mm.
powerful, you
Mm.
know, and it felt true. And so then I tested that knowing by asking, you know. And so through those experiences in my life, through that practice, I've gained confidence and trust within my own inner knowing, you know? So a lot of it is just practice, but I think that everybody has access to these downloads. And I think that we receive them all the time. People just don't realize that they're receiving downloads.
Mm.
So for me, that's how I do. I also receive visions too. Um, and some of them have been very, very clear, like out of body experiences. And sometimes I will just see, um, it's almost not even seeing it, I can just imagine it, you know, like I will, with my eyes open, looking at what's in front of me, have an image somewhere in the ethers, like almost like just imagining, I guess, not actually picturing, but just imagining. So I'll have
Mhm.
this imagination situation happen, and spirit is showing me through images something, you know.
Mm.
So one example of that is just a recent video that I did. Spirit was showing me somebody, and it was in a stick figure form, like these pieces of paper, or a piece of paper that was folded,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and the
Uh,
stick figure that was like pushing, you know, so I was seeing like a little stick figure guy going and pushing this paper, and he's trying to unfold his experience by force, right? Rather than just allowing the unfolding to happen. So I'll receive silly little images like that, you know, that happen while I'm having conversations with spirit, I guess.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't actually hear voices. I've never heard any voices, but I have conversations, I guess you could say, with different energies.
Hmm.
So I can feel, it's a feeling. So I feel, no, what I don't even know all the clairvoyance,
Clairsentience.
clairsentience, claircognizance is what I experience the most, just receiving downloads and just having that inner knowing.
Hmm.
Um,
A clairaudience, I think, is hearing or
Yeah,
something.
I don't hear, but the other clairs are up and operating for me. I don't know if I will ever get to the point where I do hear stuff or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Um, I don't even know if that's necessary, because it's most of my communication with spirit is telepathic. You know, we just have conversations. And like I said, I can feel the different types of energies. So I know when it's source, like straight up full source. I know when it's a, certain archetypal energy,
Mm.
that.
And so, so much to unpack in that. I mean, one of the first things that stuck out to me was you were talking about your dad and then the Maury Povich show. And I think this is such a wonderful illustration that that we need the contrast of black and white, right? We will look at it and be like, oh, the Maury Povich show, oh, it caused society to be this and it caused society to be that, right? People running around yelling and doing all this drama and all this other kind of stuff. But it can be through something like that that gives you a message, right? It's through all of the things that we see. A lot of the times we see things that maybe we don't like, but those are the things. I don't know if it was you I was talking to or somebody else, but someone said the more trauma that you experience, the more you become intuitive, the more you are more aware of your body because of all the things that affect your body, and spoke about sort of that feeling, and I there are times where I'll be having a conversation, or there'll be times where I'm kind of lucid dreaming. I'm waking up out of a dream or falling asleep at night, and I'll have this really profound thought, like, and I just know, and it connects. It kind of makes sense. And so I understand what you're saying, and sometimes part of me goes back to the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, right? And in the movie The Matrix, you talk about, like, hey, I didn't know how to fly a helicopter, I didn't know kung fu, you know what I mean? And like all of a sudden
Yeah.
this download came in, and it makes me think to myself that there is a higher version of myself up there that's going, okay, download into him this or download into him that, and it comes at the perfect time, in divine timing, where
Yes.
we don't understand it, and yet, and maybe it only comes as a small stream, but over time, in like this dead riverbed, it's just like a small stream that's just kind of moving along, and it's just, well, what's that going to do? I mean, that's not, and then little by little, if we pay attention, which is what I think you're saying, is kind of understand that this thing will grow if we pay attention to it. You talked about the clairs, and I'm deathly afraid of being clairaudient, because once I start hearing voices, then society says you're crazy. You know what I mean? Like, you heard a voice, you're crazy. But I think it's so much easier to just kind of get a feeling in the body, right? Like a tightness in the stomach, or not wanting to be around certain energies. I've recognized that I don't want to be around certain energies anymore, and that's not to say that I want to withdraw my energy. It's to say that I want to cultivate it and share it in those types of environments where it's welcomed and it's reciprocated. So there was just a lot that was in
Yeah.
that. And I don't think that's even kind of all of it, but one of the things that, for people that are watching, if they start experiencing these things, how do they know? Okay, because some people may question, is this just my thinking? Am I just making these decisions on my own? How do people bounce that idea, or get that yes energy that you're talking about, that knowing? How would people um, do that, in your opinion? What would help?
Yeah. So again, a lot of it comes down to practice, and I think the biggest thing is that no thing is good or bad, right? And that even works for our decisions. And I think that what is so beautiful about this experience is that there is so much room for grace, you know? And whenever people feel like they need to, get all anxious, like they need to make sure that they're doing the right thing, that's actually coming from a fear-based programming, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So the first thing that I always suggest is to just take a deep breath. And every time, anytime you ever feel like you aren't doing the right thing or things aren't making sense, just like stop for a second, take a breath, just breathe. And the next thing is the most profound thing, I think, are experiencing the synchronicities, because, and the timing, right? Because we get exposed to certain content, information, whatever that resonates with us, and we might not be ready for it in that moment. But it was just a seed that was being planted. Give yourself grace because you're not ready, and that's fine, right? It was just you needed to have that seed planted in that moment, right? And as you experience and go through your day to day life, you'll begin to see more and more synchronicities, and then more and more information will present itself. And like you said, always in divine timing, right? So within this experience, there's so much room for learning, right? That's what we're here for. We're here to learn and expand our consciousness through actually experiencing. And it's in those moments where we're unsure, and we make one decision and we think, oh, that maybe that wasn't the best decision. but we learned something from it, right? So then our consciousness is expanded, our awareness is heightened. And then when we go into another experience, we have more practice, right, with our discernment and being able to recognize the patterns and the synchronicities, right? So we notice, for me, like being a chosen one, that wasn't something that I really learned about in the medicine way, you know. Um, that wasn't a term that I had was familiar with, you know. I had just come across that information maybe like 10 years ago. And even then, I was in the spiritual community. I was working as a healer. I was doing all these things, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool, you know, whatever." Just flipping through, scrolling through YouTube or whatever. I'm like, "Oh, chosen ones, whatever." You know, big deal. Um but a lot of it comes down to just simply choosing it yourself, right? You just choose to choose yourself every day and choose to be 1% more aware, 1% healthier, 1% more conscious every single day, you know? And it's just over time. It wasn't even until last year that I truly deeply resonated with being a chosen one or an earth angel and all this other stuff, right? I knew that I was different. I knew that I was a healer. I knew that I came here for a very specific reason, right? I knew that this time would come. I knew that when I was 18, when I chose to be a medicine woman and be awakened as a medicine person in preparation for this time right now. You know, it's like I knew these things were going to happen. I knew that people would need someone to find comfort in, you know. But also, like you said, the more trauma you experience, the more intuitive you are, right? So the earth angels, the chosen ones, are the ones who have probably been dealt the most difficult hands, who have been, you know, were gaslighted their whole lives in one form or another, you know, and are forced to learn to discern for themselves and to heal themselves. And so the earth angels, the chosen ones, the people that resonate with that are truly healers. And we have to choose to want to heal ourselves so that we can heal the collective energy, you know. But the doubt is always present, and that is the programming, right? So that's the energy that we come here to transmute, is that fear and that doubt, because the doubt comes in when you are afraid to lose control of the mind and how it thinks, right? So it's overcoming your mind and being in a position to choose yourself, your experience, your growth, and however that looks. It doesn't look the same for everybody, you know? So ultimately, just loving yourself is the number one thing. Loving yourself and learning to trust yourself, right? And through your experience, through your traumas, you're given a million opportunities to learn to do that for yourself.
Sorry, I keep toggling the microphone so I can mute it just in case the dog barks. But um, yeah, it's extremely interesting, you know, and I have questions that I want to ask you, but as you talk, more questions just pop up, right? And I think that that is, I mean, this is a conversation, right? And the conversation should occur organically. Um, there's just it's so interesting because your YouTube channel, you just said a moment ago, you know, you're scrolling through YouTube, somebody's talking about chosen ones, right? And so there was somebody back then, and they're saying, you know, hey, this is what's going on. You know, people are waking up, and maybe one person is and two people is. And then, like we talked about, my version was a stream, your version was a seed, right? There's a little bit comes, you're not quite ready for it. And then you see something else over here, you see something else over here. And then one day you're sitting there and you pick up a book or you hear a video and boom, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. And you kind of go like, maybe, right? So it goes from, no, this is nonsense. What are these people talking about? These guys are crazy, to, hey, maybe there is something more than just, this ball of dirt and water, and air hurling through space around a big ball of fire, right? I mean, it's so simple to actually sit there and go, this is ridiculous to think that this is all that there is, that we're a series of chemicals on this planet, revolving around this massive sun, and there's nothing else. And we're just supposed to get the job and get the house with the picket fence, like I said. And yet society, the machine, the programming outside of the matrix, or the programming of the matrix, tells us, no, this is what it is. And yet there are these little viruses that have gotten into the matrix, and those little viruses is the person whose video you watched, and then now you're the virus to me, and now I'm creating content as well, and I'm the virus to someone else, right? So
Yes.
going in that process, tell me a little bit about how you decided to start your channel, when you decided, okay, I'm going to do this on YouTube, and yeah, what that process was about, because I think it's fascinating that you have helped so many people. And I can only speak from my experience, but if my experience is indicative of other people's experiences, which I know that it is, your message, your light, the help that you're offering, the hand that you're reaching out to people, has really been, I would say, exponentially, probably, boosted. In the old days, it was one person had to talk to you. You had to meet somebody in a bus stop somewhere, or, travel to India and be with a guru or whatever it is. And now today there's this beautiful broadcast. So again, I'm sorry to ramble, but if you could go back and just tell me what made you decide to start a YouTube channel, and you can talk a little bit about the other stuff as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like I just mentioned earlier, that I knew that this time was coming, right? So the way that it happened was I went through my medicine training, and I was 18 years old when I started. Now I'm 36.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was introduced to Pleiadians and just information. And I was always channeling information, but I knew and was told, that I would be basically a mentor at some point, right? That's the whole point. You take the walk, and then at the end you're the wise woman, right? You're the sage,
Yeah.
you're the person, right? You did the walk, and now you sit here and you teach and lead other people, and through your stories, through your experience. And that was the old way of doing things. So I actually went way against the grain as far as what is traditional in terms of mentoring, right? And the medicine woman that awakened me, and she's my ex mother-in-law, she's grandmother, some of my children. She's not for the way that I do things. She's not for it. She's not for it. It goes totally against the traditional ways, right? Because like you said, it used to be a time where you had to come across like me. I didn't go out seeking this. It just happened, right? I just aligned myself every day until the point that I was 18 and asked, do you want to take this path? There's no turning back, right? Once you choose this path, you're on this path for the rest of your life. And so within that, I knew that that there was going to be a mass awakening, period. Period, period, period. I knew it was coming. I knew it when I was 18. And all these years later, I started to see more and more people waking up, right? So then I knew, okay, we're getting close. We're getting so close. And then the eclipse happened last April. It's been almost a year, the solar eclipse. And in that time, I did a ritual with one of my friends who was awakening herself, and walked her through this portal, not even realizing myself that I'm going through this portal with her and updating myself even, so it was at that time when I started to really channel in messages, and it was so intense. I mean, when I first started channeling, and this information would start flowing, I would literally be jittery, just like with so much energy. It was so much more energy than I was used to harnessing and flowing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I had all of these downloads, I had all this information, but I also had the experience of my medicine walk, and I had the inner knowing that I would eventually be leading other people in their spiritual journey, or at least assisting in some type of a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, I also had wired in me a desire to create content. I'm an artist also. I love all types of different art, just expressing. And so YouTube was something that I have been thinking about for well over a decade. And it was something that I was afraid to do. I was afraid to put myself out there, but I also had so many interests that I wasn't exactly sure on what content I wanted to focus on. You know what I mean? It was like
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't just start a channel and have everything, because I have so many interests and talents and things to share, but I just didn't know what kind of category I wanted to put myself in until I started channeling those messages. And then Spirit said, "Girl, it's your time. It's time. You need to start practicing speaking," right? So, as a medicine person, everything is about respect. And I know that being a spiritual guide, mentor, anything, you have to be willing to do the own work yourself, right? Because anything you guide someone else to do, anything you instruct or whatever anybody else to do, you have to be able to do it yourself, right? So it took me all these years to gain the confidence within myself, gain trust within myself, and then gain my own respect. So it was like Candice had to gain the respect of my higher self, right? Until I knew, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. People are going to think I'm just some random chick that just started channeling, right? She might not know anything, or have any real experience in any of this. So I had to know and feel comfortable with the fact that people were probably going to come after me, and I still needed to push through it, right? So I just started recording videos, and they were awkward, and I felt really uncomfortable doing it, but I knew that that's just what I had to do. And then I just continued to do that and still continue to do that, and relay, kind of be a mouthpiece for spirit right now until people begin to practice well enough where they can just feel comfortable doing it for themselves, because we can all do it. Everybody can do it. Everybody's a channel. Everybody is a soul having a human experience. Everybody has access to their soul, to their higher self, to their inner knowing. And that's what people are waking up to, right? They're waking up to this. So just going through the walk, doing the thing. And another thing that's really funny for anybody who is interested in starting something, that whole something that you've been doing for a decade or two, like you're a pro at it, whether you think that it's important or not, there's a reason that you're a pro at it. There's a reason that you've been doing it for so long. So when it came down to what am I going to create content on, it was like, girl, you've been doing the medicine walk for 18 years. What do you mean what are you going to do it on? Right.
Yeah.
It made logical sense. But it was also that intuitive draw and that nudge that I've followed too. So that's where the yin yang balance always comes in. It's like, yes, God gave us a brain and a mind for a reason, right? We have, thought processes that, you know, that we should practice and use our intellect, but also follow those impulses. And the one thing that I have found that is solid, right? It's solid and it's practiced, is doing inspired actions, following your inspired actions, right? And people will say, well, what is inspired action? Okay, so it's a moment where I take action based on a thought or an inspiration in that moment that is applicable in that moment, right? So one day I'm sitting outside and spirit says, you have this simple message. I need you to relay it. Well, that was an inspiration. I had that inspiration right in that moment. And in that moment, I was sitting outside. My babies were napping. My big kids were at school. I had nothing else to do. So I had the opportunity to take that inspired action in that moment, right? And so just doing that really is what started everything, is taking those inspired actions and not sabotaging myself by telling myself that I couldn't do it. I just did it anyway, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how it all started. It was just that knowing, the experience, the figuring out my, my niche, my thing, my whatever. I'm just a spiritual chick
Uh,
that's done the medicine walk. I have the experience. And then now I'm just channeling for the collective also.
yeah. And I think, you know, you talked about inspired, right? You talked about, and what is inspired, in spirit, right? Inspired. What is spiritual awakening? It's anytime our spirit, for whatever reason, resonates with something, right? So for me, like, I will always think to myself, I don't want to do a lot of things. They're too hard, they're too difficult. There's this, there's that. And then there's other things that I really enjoy doing. There's things that I get lost in. I'm artistic as well. So I do graphic design and I paint and I draw and I do all kinds of different things. And those times where I start doing those things, time just disappears, right? Where you look up and you go, oh, okay, well, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon right now. And then all of a sudden the sun is going down and you're like, I didn't dump the garbage, cook the dinner, do all these different types of things. And to me, that's being in spirit, right? That's tuning into something which is love. It's a higher frequency. It's something that I truly resonate with. And when I do those things, as I said before, my spirit awakens. So I have a spiritual awakening. And I think a lot of people think of spiritual awakenings as these big aha moments, and they can be as simple as doing what it is that you love. You talked about matching your higher self. And I struggle with that too, because I make videos and I think to myself the same thing. Like, people are probably thinking, like, who is this person? What the hell's going on with him? But you mentioned having this energy, and I don't necessarily have energy, but what I do have is ideas that come through, and they come through like a flood. They're not coming through like a trickle. And sometimes I can get like, well, I have no time. I can't do this. But again, the idea is that we are receiving these things. We do have the ability to act on them. We have to make choices that we're going to do those things, and sometimes it's scary, because the part of you that wants to be liked by everybody is going to respond to the negative comment by one person or two people or whatever. And 30 people in your life are telling you, hey, that was great. I heard it. It was fantastic. And you'll look at that one or two people, and you will attach yourself, to some past version of yourself that failed or got picked last in line to play basketball or whatever the situation is. So I love the fact that you talked about how you have to align yourself to what it is that's coming through, because as I'm putting these things out, I am looking at them in my experience. I look at them and I say, we're like a group of cavemen, like we talked about, and I'm running around and the lightning strikes the tree and I pick up the branch and it's on fire and I recognize that it's on fire and it could be dangerous, but it could be useful, right? And then we take it back to the tribe and we're showing them, like, look, here's some fire, and that's where I have to place myself. I haven't been through a medicine walk. I haven't, but I have been through my own ritual and initiation, and I've had my own trauma, and I've done work on those particular things. So when I do come back, I'm coming back to share the fire and to say, I'm going to have to learn about the fire too. Like, I don't know if we can recreate it. It may burn the whole village down. I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that it's fire, and I know that it can be useful, and I know internally it can change things, right? And so, but again, my self-esteem will tell me that people are going like, oh, here comes the fire king, you know what I mean? Or like, here comes the man with the fire, and it's like, no, that's not my point. My point is that I'm not a perfect person. I have a concept. That concept is coming through from a higher version of myself, and that higher version of myself is just trying to lead me, go over in this direction. Um and I have to have that compassion for myself, that I'm learning and these concepts are truths, and it doesn't matter if I have it 100% complete. Like you said, it's that my higher self does, that higher version of me does, and it's giving me that opportunity to learn that in this phase of my development, and I have a choice to do that. And you spoke about love, and you speak often about love in your videos, and how love can change things, and love is the only frequency, so tell me a little bit about that process and how you, because you have a tell. Okay, so you have a tell. When you're telling the truth, that's when your cosmic giggle comes out, because I notice in your videos, and even in talking with you, you will get to a point where it's flowing as a conversational piece, but if you stop it at the cosmic giggle, there's truth. There's truth and there's honesty, and that's not a bad, that's a wonderful tell. Like, it's not like, don't go to Vegas, or whatever, but I think it is awesome that you're able to look at those truths, and it shows that you're comfortable with that process. A lot of people are afraid of those processes, like, well,
Yeah.
here's the truth and I got to deal with it. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, so that is very interesting that you've seen that pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it comes from being a heyuka, right? Medicine person, which would be classified as the joker,
Mm-hmm.
the person who is the giggle at a funeral, the person that sees the humor in this experience,
Right.
So and a lot and that giggle it comes from a place of compassion, and I truly think that it is sweet and
Mm-hmm.
so cute for us to come here and have this awakening experience, So whenever truths are being spoken, you can have a truth and it can be uncomfortable, but you can still see the humor in it. And that's what the Heyokas do. We just naturally see the humor in the situations. And, maybe in our past, we didn't see it as so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But once you understand the beauty of the dark and the light working together and how love transmutes all of the fear programming,
Mm-hmm.
because we are taught to automatically just shut off and block anything that is, dark or negative or, whatever. And I was thinking about this today, actually, simply having really dark, evil thoughts, and it's like, where does this come from, right? It's the Satan within. It's that darkness within yourself,
Mm.
and in this programming, we're programmed to block it off with fear, right? Instead of embracing it with love and allowing ourselves to come from a compassionate place and see, where is the wound? Where is the trauma? Right?
Mm.
Why are we reacting in this manner? Right? And that's what's so cool about the love, is that, and I've faced Satan himself, um, I say Satan himself. I've faced what I believe to be the most terrifying version of, you know, a being, and in the depths and darkness, in hell, screaming at me. And luckily that clear audience doesn't work for me, because I couldn't actually hear anything. I think if I did hear the scream that was coming at me, I would have lost my hearing, because the rage, the anger, the hate that was coming at me, that I was looking at, it was intense, and instead of being afraid, instead of being upset, I came from that compassionate place and just held space for that energy. And that space was just unconditional love. And it was, honey, why are you so hurt? you know, and just loving it, and saying, I see you, you're hurting, right? You're just
Mhm.
hurting, and that's it. It's
Yeah.
rooted, that illusion of separation, space. And so when we're taught to not embrace our darkness, and like I said, block it off, we don't we don't really get to truly love ourselves the way
Mm.
that we are meant to be loving ourselves, right? We're designed to be able to love ourselves and hold this unconditional love, not just for us, but for everybody else. But if you
Mm.
can't do it for yourself, if you can't see your own darkness and hold space for it to feel comfortable to express itself, right?
Mhm.
Feel comfortable expressing its traumas, its hurts, its, you know, whatever, then we don't get to expand, we don't get to evolve truly. We just that's where we get stuck in
Yeah.
fear. And that's the thing that what I was always taught, is that we have, two options. It's love or it's fear, you know? And a lot of times we feel like we don't have a choice, because we're programmed one way or another. We're programmed to operate in fear. We're programmed to react in a certain way. But it's through our life experience and through these synchronicities that we see patterns of behavior that aren't suiting us and our health, right? So then we have that opportunity to choose to heal, so that we can operate from love and choose to love ourselves and have compassion for ourselves, and just embody unconditional love,
Mm.
right? And as we do that, we shift more and more out of fear. But the beautiful thing is that we are constantly given opportunities to react or respond out of love or out of fear,
Mhm.
And sometimes people feel like their, life is happening to them, but it's just, again, through these divine timing situations where those awakenings happen, and then we have, again, another opportunity to shift or reprogram ourselves out of fear. So it's like a lot of what we're doing, where people call it, light workers, our main mission is to cultivate unconditional love within ourselves, and compassion, so that whenever we meet our shadow selves, our own darkness, or the shadows or darkness of other people, which is us
Mm-hmm.
also manifested, right? Then we don't judge, we hold space and just love it and love
Yeah.
it, you know? And the more people hold space like that, hold unconditional love space for other people, the more we get to raise the frequency of the planet. You stop taking things so personally. When this cranky lady, wants
Yeah,
to,
I was gonna bring
yeah,
that up.
it's like whenever cranky ladies want to behave how cranky ladies want to behave, you look at them and you're like, I love you. I know that you're hurting somewhere. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you want to admit it or not, whether you're ready to see it or not, I'm not going to judge you for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to simply hold space for you to express yourself, right? Until you're ready to get it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is like, through love, unconditional love, we have an opportunity to heal ourselves and hold space for other people in their healing journeys.
Yeah. So because I did watch that video where I assume you're talking about the lady with the shopping cart.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you about that, ironically, even before you said that, because in my opinion, the more that I learned, the more I recognize, you talked about the structures and the programming, and we're talking about, I made a video actually about how we are living lives from the, 1800s, right? Where the idea was to get a bunch of kids into a school and to teach them what they needed to work in a factory, and then to push them out and to eventually, you know use them for social security or whatever it is, right? So there's this whole process of this industrialized kind of factory worker mentality, and we do not learn about spiritual development. We don't learn about the light and the dark. We learn about history, we learn about English, we learn about math, and these things are all important, don't get me wrong, but we don't learn how to self-regulate. We don't learn how to live healthy lives. I mean, we do in some sense, but it's such a small part of the curriculum. And so as we're going through this process, that is our conditioning. So our conditioning tells us that we don't know how to deal with the midlife crisis. We don't know how to deal with healthy relationships. We don't know how to play on the playground in the way that's favorable for everyone. And that process, that becomes our overarching thought process. And so then we do get into conflict with other people, and we do create all of this tension. And I realize as you begin to wake up, we're behind enemy lines. Like the programming,
Yeah.
this is dangerous territory.
Yeah, we're
Because
inside. This is an inside job.
Mhm.
We're the ground, crew. We came in here and we're actually doing the stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yep.
actually doing it.
It's like you're a and I hate to put it this way, but it's kind of like you're just like a special forces person. You're dropped into a jungle somewhere, you're behind enemy lines, everybody is going to try to shut you down, everybody's going to try to tell you you're wrong, you're crazy, you're this, you don't fit within the model. And I loved it when you shared on that video. And I want you to get into this a little bit, because I understand unconditional love, and I understand, but also you were talking about the dark side of us, that the demon part of us, the shadow. We live in a world of contrast, light and dark. There's always got to be some dark, right? And I think the dark is really scared that it's not going to be taken into the light, right? So I think that that's a when you talk about having that unconditional love, and you look at it and you go, oh, you poor demon, you're just hurt and you're scared and you're this and you're that, but don't worry, you're not going to be stuck in the dark. That there is a change, that we can shift the paradigm and understand that this is not the end. This is a material existence. The dark, for whatever reason, wants us to believe this is the end, because light and dark is the only thing that it knows. And once we make that transition, there doesn't have to be dark and light. When we go to where God is, even the dark gets to come, right? But we've been conditioned that no, the dark doesn't get to come. It's separated from us and it has its own little place, and here's heaven. So you were talking about the woman, you bumped into her cart, but you said something that was so awesome. You said, but now I eat it up. Like I just ate up that negativity. The
Yeah.
old me would like get involved with it and hunker down into, and preserve all my resources so that I was able to really throw everything I had at her with my attitude, with my stare, with my energy, with everything. And you giggled at that point too, and you were just like, and I ate it up. You know what I mean? And so I want you to talk a little bit about that, about how it's not a negative thing, how it's just sort of like Pac-Man, and you're just a ghost and you're blinking, so I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm not running from you. I'm going to turn and I'm just going to go ahead and absorb you.
Yeah.
Yeah, speak a little bit about that, because I thought that was such a great video.
Yeah, it is so fascinating actually. I love to talk about the light and the dark because like you said, we are so programmed to fear the dark, but once you're not afraid of the dark anymore, then you're not afraid to face it.
Mm,
And once you truly fall in love with yourself, and that's so much the journey is self-love, right?
mm-hmm,
Is falling back in love with yourself and the dark and the light, because nothing is good or bad,
mm-hmm,
right? And the light's not good or bad, the dark's not good or bad. There, within the two, we have to maintain a balance, right?
mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
if you're too much love and light, then you're being delusional because you're not accepting the dark side. If
right.
you're too dark and you act like you know want to destroy everything, that's a lie too, because you still have a light side. You
Right,
know,
right.
and it's being able to find a balance between those two energies and just loving it. It's like we need the dark side. I rely on my dark side sometimes when I'm really needing to set some heavy boundaries with
Mm-hmm,
people. You
mm-hmm,
know, does that mean that it is coming from an unhealed, traumatized version of my shadow? No, because I've healed. I've done the healing,
mm-hmm,
right? And that's the cool thing. That's just the most beautiful thing, because you start your journey, whether it's physical health, whether it's mental health or spiritual health. It is these three body complexes that work together, the mind, body, and soul complexes,
mm-hmm,
right? So some people start off with the physical journey, then they find themselves doing yoga, and then they find themselves getting in touch with their higher self, and then they find themselves trying to heal all their relationships with themselves and their mind. And then all of a sudden they're like, hold on a second, I just healed my whole all my complexes,
right,
and now I'm
right.
enlightened and I'm experiencing bliss and I'm able to move through my experience without judgment. And
Yeah.
that's what it all comes down to, is that within this matrix, within this programming, we are programmed to judge and to fear, you know, and whenever you lose the fear and lose the judgment and replace it with love and compassion, you show those things to yourself and you get to show it to other people, or simply just not respond because you are not in that reactive survival state anymore. You're healed, you're comfortable, you're secure, and you don't feel a need to react from somebody else's trauma or, you know, whatever it is, their negative energies. You just don't have to react to it. You're just like, you know what? I respect myself enough. I love myself enough where I think I'm just going to not. I
Yeah.
think I'm just going to go this way. You
Yeah.
know, I think this is not what I choose to experience right now. So I think I'm going to put my focus on something else
Right.
and walk over here.
Right.
you know,
Right.
so that's just the coolest thing, is you learn to love yourself and you learn to respect yourself in such a manner um, that it reflects outward, and then you learn to love and respect everybody else from just a really genuine place. It's just It just is because you do it for yourself, and then
Yeah.
you have no choice but to do it for others, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be
And so,
honest, my fear programming kicked in when that happened because I was like, I experienced PTSD through my dad's
mm,
PTSD. He was a Marine sniper, and he suffered severely from PTSD and had a very hard time adjusting back to civilian life. And so I was very deeply conditioned and programmed to be on high alert for any type of danger. So in
mm,
that moment, when I chose to not respond or react out of a fear place, I didn't in that moment. I was just like, okay, whatever, I'm going to go on about my day. Enjoy your bad attitude.
mhm,
Um, I I did that, but then as I was going through the store, I was like, almost on guard for a minute because I was like, I don't know this lady. She could try and come up and attack me. And I would really hate to lay her out in the middle of the store. You know what I mean? And not simply because I think I'm cool. It's just that I was trained with jujitsu and all types of other things from my dad. Right. So I was like trained
mhm,
physically to protect myself. And so in those moments, it's like, yeah, I'm still a human. I still have my programming kick in, you know, but I was telling myself that I was safe. I was like, you're safe. You're safe. You just chose not to respond. And if this lady is really that upset, she wants to chase you down and rip your hair out of your head, you're gonna be safe because you're properly trained to defend yourself.
mhm. Yes.
So it's just so interesting being a human here, right? Because no
Yeah.
matter how spiritual you are, no matter how enlightened you are, you're still a human having a human experience, and your programming is going to kick in. But once you're a conscious creator and you're aware, you see when that programming kicks in, and you're like, oh, there's a fear-based programming here. What can I do to resolve this?
Yeah.
Right? I can choose to believe that I'm safe. you know,
Mhm.
I could have gotten attacked by this lady, but I didn't. Why? Also, it has to do with my frequency. We're not going to get attacked by people if we're not, if we're resonating at a certain frequency, certain things just don't happen in our experience anymore. Right?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
like disease, you
Yeah.
know, and just like anything, whenever you raise your frequency, whenever you heal your body, certain bad things just simply won't exist there, right? Let's say you boost your immune system to the point where you can go into, you know, any environment, a store where people, any store, any place really is just filled with germs and viruses and all kinds of stuff. And you just move through your life because you're like, I could go anywhere, I could do anything, and I won't get attacked. And even if they attack me, I got a system put in place, my immune system, that is, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
is functioning, and
Yeah.
that's how our frequency operates too. So I had to, in that moment, it's just silly to think about how I was like, oh, I'm about to get beat up.
Yeah.
But then I was like, no, you're not. First of all, no, you're not because you're not in that frequency. Two, no, you're not because you just won't. it's just
Yeah.
it's just silly to even think that, right? But that's
Yeah.
that programming, that PTSD come in, that was like, you have to be aware anybody can attack you at any point. You have to be, watch your back. You don't have to get ready if you stay ready, so stay ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all
Yeah.
that
But
stuff.
those things are so true. I think you again you breach onto some really interesting points of we you well you're talking about balance. I think that's the main thing is that you're talking about because I go through the same thing too. I work in Santa Monica, and up until the last 10 years or whatever, if you went to Santa Monica, it's beautiful. There's people roller skating, there's joggers, there's the blue ocean, there's this. And today, you might pull into a gas station and be stabbed by a homeless guy that's has no shirt on, or whatever. So the world itself is still existing no matter what we're doing. I mean, I remember watching like The Secret and or What the Bleep Do We Know, one of those movies, and it was like, well, the lady thought that she lived in a dangerous place, so she saw dangerous criminals. But when she just started thinking to herself, I live in a safe place, she elevated her frequency and those criminals went away. And there is this thing. I think it's fascinating. Your dad is a sniper, right? So your dad is a sniper. That's somebody that's got to go out. It's got to remain hidden. It's got to put all his focus onto like one target, take out that target, and then move on to sort of the next thing, right? And how that process of you don't have to, get ready if you're always ready, and we always have to be situationally aware, is the epitome of fear, right? It's the epitome. It's literally like something is around me somewhere, and that probably goes back again to when we were running around with spears and there's a bear or there's a tiger or whatever it is. And then your process of coming through that, being raised with that, being trained in jujitsu, understanding how to elevate your frequency, having those options available, and yet that experience still comes in because, like I said, I'll get out to go and put in some gas, and you see somebody coming and they got no shirt on and their hair's all matted and they're talking to themselves, and they got like a rotten hamburger or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's two choices. There's one choice, which is why I need to prepare to defend myself because something may happen, right? And then there's the other choice, which is to say, well, I need to give this guy $5 or buy him another sandwich or do whatever it is. And that's that choice, I think, that we're constantly in the process of making. But I want you to just talk really quickly about that line, because I think it's such an important part of what you're saying. It's like, okay, there's, no matter how high of a frequency we're getting to, we still must prepare in some way, because you can't just wish that the world were a high frequency place. And I often have this conversation where I will talk to certain people and they'll say, well, all we have to do is just love the enemy. And I go, okay, that's great. You start loving the enemy, and then, China comes and takes over all the loving people. You know what I mean? Or Russia comes and takes over all the loving people, or India comes and takes, or heck, just gang members from your own community, whatever. They come and they take over all the loving people. And I never truly internally believed that that was going to be possible, that somehow a light would hit the earth and everyone would ascend all at once and be like, this is silly, and throw down their switchblades and their gang jackets and their weapons and all of those different types of things.
Yeah.
So I see war externally as an internal battle that I'm having, right? That there is
Yes.
conflict in the world because I have conflict within myself. And this
Yes.
goes back to what you were saying about the highest self and the download coming through. If I can love myself, if I can honor myself, if I can take care of myself, if I don't look at myself and say the habits that I have are negative, if I don't judge myself and say I'm not smart enough, strong enough, young enough, educated enough, whatever it is, and I just accept my experience, then I can begin to make peace with myself. And then I can have authentic relationships, and I can cultivate relationships with the external world, right?
Right.
But I wanted you to kind of talk about that balance and how we do get to that balance, because the 3D sort of the need to feel secure, I think is so deep within our genetics. It's so deep within running through the night from the monster. And people are just now beginning to wake up, so they're just now beginning to kind of understand. So if you could talk a little bit about that balance, how you've found, and I think you did with the last conversation, is the last question that you answered as well. But I'm really interested in this fact of what is that balance? Like, how do you find that balance of operating in the world? I love how you said, I'm not going to get beat up because I'm in the right frequency, and I'm just not going to get beat up because I'm a badass and know jujitsu, and I can strangle this lady out, choke this lady out, and it's not that big of a deal, right?
Right.
How do you find that? How do you help people find that? And how do you kind of take some of that fear of the world, fear of the news and fear of all those different things, and sort of take some of that burden off people?
Yeah, so one thing that that experience actually helped me to understand was just another layer of that fear programming, right? So once you get into alignment with the mindset, right, you shift your mindset from this experience is happening to me
Mm,
versus this experience is happening for me, right?
mm,
If I'm operating from a wounded place, and we've all been there, we have experience in that, right? We have an experience with another version of ourself that's wounded and it triggers us and we're wounded. So two wounded aspects of ourselves are battling each other,
yes, yeah.
right? So once you heal, and it's layers and layers. It's not like you just heal one day and then you're done. This is an everyday thing. Every day we're healing, every day we're growing, everybody. And so I luckily had gotten myself into a position where I knew and had programmed myself to know this experience isn't happening to me, it's happening for me, right?
Mm,
So just going into it with that mindset. This is happening for me to learn something, right? Well, I wasn't resonating with the idea that I was still angry, right? Because I wasn't in that energy. I
yeah,
didn't resonate with her in that way. So I was able to just observe and be like, okay, this lady's angry, right? But what this opportunity and this experience presented to me was the chance to feel that fear programming kick in. So then again, I got to choose because I've programmed myself to think this is happening for me. I'm feeling this fear of getting beat up for a reason. And what is that reason? The reason is because there's another layer of this fear programming that you need to address
mm,
and transmute, right? So what I did in that moment to create that balance for myself was hold that space for myself and tell myself that I was safe, right? I'm safe in my experience
hmm
and love myself, love my experience, and love what was going to happen no matter what, right? And feeling the feelings. I had to feel the feelings of, wow, my shadow part coming in and be like, yeah, that would feel amazing to lay this lady out in the middle of the floor because somebody needs to do it, right? This
yeah,
lady needs a reality check and I don't mind doing it, right?
yeah,
That was my shadow. Like I was feeling that. I'll be honest. I was feeling that and I was like, yeah, pumping myself up. I was like, oh, if this happens, it's happening.
yeah,
Because I don't ever get in situations where I have to physically defend myself very often.
yeah.
Um, but that experience gave me an opportunity, right, to see another layer of healing that needed to occur, or transmuting, or however you want to say it. So that is what is the beauty of all of these awakenings, is that each time we awaken, we get to peel back another layer of the programming, really, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It is. I just always think it's so interesting because, again, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. There's a lot of human things that are going on. There's um, a lot of things that are just not spiritual, I guess you could say. And even then, maybe it's all spiritual. I mean,
I
I again, I love
think
the,
it is. It's all energy.
yeah. I mean, the
Spirit
concept
to
that
me.
basically that you're sharing of, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. I have a friend right now that is going to court. She's going to court today, and for DUI. It's her second DUI. She was driving with a suspended license. It's
Oh
just,
no.
yeah, it's just a bad scene, right? And um, you know, there's a lot of fear in that because my freedom's going to get taken. I made a decision. My freedom is going to get taken away. Um, I have to go in front of a bunch of people, and there's going to be this authority figure there, and the authority figure is going to tell me that I'm a bad person because of a choice that I made. Um, and I may be confined, you know, but I love what you're saying. If in every moment, this is happening for me, yes, I'm available to it. I'm open to it. Some things worse than others. I mean, I don't want to be in a car accident and have my legs amputated, or something terrible, but that at the end of that experience that something will come from it because it's all part of this story that's unfolding. But I have the ability to respond and not react, whereas before it's just response. I'm sorry, it's just reaction, right? It's just reaction. So I'm a dog trainer, and when we work with dogs, you have what are called active dogs and then reactive dogs. And a reactive dog reacts to whatever is in the environment. If it sees a squirrel go by, it just goes after the squirrel. It doesn't wait for, can I,
yeah.
But through training, we can make that dog reactive. We can actually take the impulse to go after the rabbit or the squirrel. We can reassign that impulse to a handler, and then that handler can either tell them, go ahead and go get it, or that has nothing to do with us. And I think that's what you're getting at in terms of that spirit and that mental place where we don't just have to run after the rabbit. We see the rabbit. There's a great movie. You may not have watched it, but the Road Warrior with Mad Max, the Road Warrior with Mel Gibson. And in it, he's got like this dog, and this guy's trying to kill him. And he gets the guy, and he ties the guy up in his car, and he's driving, and he's got like this shotgun aimed toward the guy, so the guy doesn't try to do anything. And the trigger is connected to a rope that the dog is holding in his mouth, right? And they're driving along, right? And so he tells the guy, like, the dog will kill you if you try to do anything. And as they're driving, right, the guy turns and he looks and he sees a rabbit run by, right? And you would imagine that the dog would also turn and just blow his head off, right? But the dog, all you see is the dog's eyes move, watch the rabbit, and then they come back to the guy, right?
You're right.
And again, that is just, it's the discipline of understanding I don't have to get attached to everything that is happening in my life. At a certain point, I can see that I have risen above that frequency. I've risen above having to go into that confrontation. I'm still capable of doing it. And again, you're way more enlightened than I am, because I find myself getting pulled into the old man often. As I said before, I just have the branch. It's on fire. I don't know. It may burn out. I have no idea. So I'm working with it, and I'm trying to figure out how it works, where I can go with it, and how I can use it to help other people if possible. But I also find myself a lot of times reacting in my own PTSD, where, as a child, I really just didn't feel safe anywhere. I didn't feel safe with anyone. I didn't have anything that made me feel safe. My life was fairly fluid. And somehow, and I don't, for the life of me, I drank a lot. I'm in recovery now, but I drank a lot. I did a lot of drugs. I just did things that could have killed me many times, could have killed other people many times. I have no idea how I got to where I am today, but I know that I have a lot of tools that got me there, and not all of them are good tools, right? So a lot of them have to do with, trying to get my own way, or, attack, or do whatever, argue, fight, control, do all these different things. And these are, again, on top of the things that we were conditioned in the Matrix to believe. These are my own set of things that I believe about myself. And so when we do come into contact with those situations, there is that moment where it does just feel natural, and it does just feel right to make everyone pay because the world is not the way I want it to be, you know?
Yeah.
So when you're doing your energy work, you give out a lot of energy, you know, you try to help a lot of people and you're working with people. How do you not get deprived of your own energy? Like, do you get to a point where you're just like, man, I noticed you, I haven't seen a video from you in like 3 days. So I don't know what the situation was, but your fans have noticed, right? Um,
Yeah.
how do you do that? How do you make sure that you're not depleting yourself completely?
Right. So the first thing is just through experience, there was a point in early in my YouTube, you know, journey where I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. I was like, "Oh, you have to get a message out every single day." And that was depleting me because I have so many other areas of my life that need my attention, and just trying to balance everything. So a lot of it was me learning to love and respect myself and my energy and setting boundaries with everything in my life, including myself. Right. So, like I said, boundaries with myself and everything else. But a lot of you know, the times whenever I go 2 or 3 days without posting, it's because I'm focusing on my family. You know, a lot of the light work that I do and a lot of my mission here is within my own family and healing the dynamics between a mother and a child. Right. So that's my main focus. And then, you know, I'm my main focus, healing within myself. That's been my whole journey this whole time. So healing myself, loving myself, respecting myself, and then focusing on my next area of, my mission here, which is transmuting energies in my family and also healing relationship dynamics um in every type of relationship in my life, myself included. And then when I have time, I just do my YouTube channels by following those inspired actions. Like if I receive a message every single day for a week straight, then you'll see me post every single day for a week straight. If spirit wants me to put my focus on myself or on something else for the day, that's where my focus is. And if I don't get a message out, then I don't. And I don't put pressure on myself about it either, because for me, it's more of just an expression and it's not something I have to rely on, for any income or, anything like that. It's just an art form for me and it's an expression for me. So, um, I do get to help and assist other people by giving my energy. And I'm also, I do receive an incredible amount of energy in return from subscribers and viewers, even like yourself, and the appreciation that you show to me. So it's like I also receive that, but I also have boundaries, when it comes to myself. And then if there are people that are like, "Oh, where have you been?" And I just tell them, "Oh, I had sick kids all week."
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
kids that were sick all week. I just and that's another thing people ask me, well, how do you have 5 kids and you know be a mom and a wife and this and do what you do? And it's like, because those are my priorities and I do this whenever I can you know
Hmm.
and that's the space and grace that we are offered here too within our experience, is that we get plenty of opportunities to do our mission, but we also have plenty of opportunities to just be a person and do the work, in our day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really cool is that makes it authentic, right? It makes it, what you just shared says, I'm not somebody that's doing it for a particular reason. I'm not doing it to get a number of views or to get some income from YouTube or as a business or whatever. it is that when the download comes, then you're sharing the message that needs to be shared. And if you were to be trying to do it every day, you would be giving just your own opinion, or, which is
Yeah, it would be
fine
a little bit
too.
forced.
Yeah, but it would be forced, and it would not be as powerful and reach, I think, the people that it needs to reach. Because I really do believe, I mean, it's like I said, sometimes it's interesting in YouTube too, because you could see a video from 3 months ago and that video is still relevant today, right?
Right.
So to
Yeah.
the viewer, you could say, well, if you haven't seen me in 3 days, just go scroll down and pick one randomly. And
Right.
it seems to be working that way too, because when you told me go back and look at my initial videos, and you'll see that they weren't as polished and as sharp, and the message was, I still went back, I still looked at those early videos, and there was still information that I was getting that was relevant to the situation that I was in, right? So I think that's such a I just think that's cool. It's authentic, and it's just saying, hey, I have other priorities. When I get the opportunity to do this, or when spirit calls me to do this, I can share the message.
Right.
Now,
Here,
oh,
hold
go
on
ahead.
1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay. Sorry. Had a
No
mom
worries.
thing.
No worries. I get it. I also watched one of your videos where you were saying something about like having all of your hands full and trying to open up the doorknob, right? And needing another arm, and or whatever it was, or somebody, maybe that wasn't yours.
Yeah, it was mine. It was one of the cards that I had. It's the Four of Pentacles.
Yeah, yeah, a
The
pentacle
guy
here, a
who's got
pentacle
the
here, and two in your hand. Yeah, and you
yeah.
said you need a fifth hand.
Yeah, that's me.
So with that being said, you have a family, you've got your own pursuits that you're doing, you've got YouTube. When you are going through difficult times, when you're going through really troubling times, when you go through a situation where maybe you don't immediately go to, okay, this is happening not to me, but it's happening for my highest good. Maybe there's something really, really intense. Can you
Mhm.
share with us practices that you would use for that, or practices that other people will be able to use for that? In order to try in those moments to develop a little bit more of it's happening for me, and not to me. So what are some of the things that you practice on a daily basis if you find that PTSD does get triggered and you can't just get over it? What are some of those practices?
Yeah, so my favorite thing to do is dancing.
Moving the body.
Dancing. But no, it all comes down to shifting my focus.
Mm-hmm.
Once I realize that I'm triggered, something's going on, I'm feeling some feelings, and I'm not mentally in a space where I can process it in a healthy way. Um I and again it takes practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the after moment after is when you give yourself the most grace. So that's number one to remember. Like always, it's the after moment. Allow yourself to spiral in whichever way you need to,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
give yourself grace afterwards. But it's a lot of it is just like seeing, okay, I am not operating in a healthy way right now. I need to shift my energy, and that's a lot of it is just shifting your energy and shift your focus, and not suppressing it or repressing anything, but just being like, you know what, I need a timeout.
Mm.
It's almost like I'll put myself in a timeout. It's more of a time in because I'm having fun, you know, but I put myself in a timeout and I'll say, you know what? I need a minute. I need a minute, whether it's, you know, literally a minute, an hour, hours, a whole
Right.
day, you know,
Yeah.
I give myself time to put it on, you know, put a pin in it until I'm in a proper mind space to come back and address whatever it is, or be able to see it, you know, without my blinders on, you know. And for me, like I said, dancing, I love music. And so I'll just put on some music, any kind of music. It doesn't matter. Sometimes um when I'm kind of right there where I'm like, I might be able to process this, I might not, I'll put on like Pandora or something like that on shuffle and
Mm-hmm.
just see what type of songs come through,
Mm.
because I'll get messages that way too, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll put it on and it'll just be, you know, like cumbia or something like that. And I'm dancing, you know, and I'm like, okay, and then I'm not thinking about what's happening anymore because I'm dancing.
Right.
And then later, you know, when I'm in a better mood, then I'm like, okay, let's think about this, you know. And so that's the number one thing that I've learned through my walk, my journey, is just not suppressing it, not ignoring it, not rejecting it, just kind of setting a boundary and say, look, I see you. I will get to you when I am in a proper headspace to
Mm.
process this information or this
Yeah.
experience, whatever it is. So doing
Nice.
that, just dancing, but I mean anything. I think that like I think it's like the Tibetan monks, they use mundane chores, you know, to shift their focus off of thinking and just doing, you know.
Yeah.
So I might, you know, choose to start cleaning the house. Right? I'm just gonna
Yeah.
start deep cleaning the house, and you know what? It's a win-win situation because the house is gonna get clean, and I'm eventually going to calm down, right?
Yeah.
Or like with my kids, I experience this a lot, like PTSD stuff come up just getting overstimulated, you know? And I have 5 kids and we don't have a huge house, you know, and it's not huge. And so when they all get to running and tumbling and getting crazy, it gets a bit much sometimes. And I'll get overstimulated. And used to, when I was wounded, I'd be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
crazy. You know, they call me psycho mom sometimes, you know, they're just like, you're crazy. Um, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
But now I feel this stuff coming up and I'm like, okay, this is triggered. This is what
Yeah.
triggered feels like. And so I'm like, all right, let's go outside.
Yeah.
Let's go outside. Simple as that. And I use those doorways as portals sometimes, you know.
Mm.
I'm like, portal from one dimension into another.
Yeah.
A portal
Yeah.
from one reality of overstimulation until, you know, into another dimension where there are no bounds and there are no walls for noise to bounce off of. You know, so it's
Yes.
like just shifting, simply shifting from one thing to another, and it looks different for everybody and it looks different for every situation, you know.
Yeah.
So just using the tools and the resources that you have available in that moment to shift your focus and to raise your vibration, you know, because our vibration, like, you know, our frequency, it's always kind of doing this. We have ups and downs, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, you just kind of want to wait until you're at a up point, you're at a higher frequency vibration to heal, or I'm sorry, to process the information experience from a more healed approach. And like always, there's layers. So my healed approach to a situation today will look, you know, a lot different than my healed approach to a situation 5 years ago or 5 years from now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You mentioned something really interesting. Um, what you're doing. Okay, let me go back to when I was a kid. Um, my stepfather. So we lived in a small house too. There was four of us, and and sometimes my younger cousin would come over to play, and we'd be playing, and we'd make a lot of noise. And my stepfather worked at night, so he would come out of the room and he would shut everything down. It was one of those things where it's like, just stop playing, everybody stop playing. And he was a
Mhm.
big Marine. Speaking of snipers, he was not a sniper. He was more one of those guys that just ran in and tore stuff up, right?
Yeah.
It's a very scary, talking about not having anyone to make you feel safe, and then having people in your life that actually you had to live with that made you feel unsafe, was its own thing. But I'm working through it, right? So,
Mhm.
um, but what you're saying, I think, is really beautiful, because what you were able to do is go with the flow of the energy as opposed to stopping the energy. So, in my
Right.
experience, the energy was stopped, shut down, stunted, and everything, and the ground just went dead.
Hmm.
And you're talking about the door as the portal, both, I'm sure, for yourself and what's going on, but also, even like you were talking about, helping your friend through that portal of a different frequency, different timeline, whatever it is. But you can take what's happening there, and then what you did was you found space, a bigger space for the energy, and something positive to do, which is, let's move our bodies and let's continue with this flow. It's here. We know it's here. And if we dam it and we well it up, we'll create disease, and that disease will occur, right?
Hmm.
So I thought that's such an interesting process to think about. Where can I find space? Because a problem really starts to cage you, right? They talk about resentments, and what resentment is to re-feel something, to resent is to resend that thought to your mind. So if I'm in that grocery store and I run into that lady and I bump into her cart and she gives me an attitude, and I leave from there, and I'm driving on the freeway, and then I go to Costco, and I'm in Costco and I'm looking at the olive oil, and then I go, that freaking lady, I can't, but right, and I have that thought again,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't, and then I go through my mind of, I would have done that, and then I get the wrong olive oil, but then I get out of line and I go home, and I'm home and I put the olive oil down, and then I realized, God, I got the wrong olive oil. That freaking lady. And I start going through it with that lady, right? Because I was thinking about that lady. And then I'm in the shower before I'm going to go to bed, and I have the thought of that lady again. I'm just re-feeling over and over and over and over again. So again, it happened to me, but I haven't let it pass through me. And I really like what you said, because really what you're saying is, find space. Don't dam it up, don't shut it down, don't suppress it, but figure out a way in your mind to find that outside, right? Like, don't be trapped in this 3-bedroom house with 8 people, and nobody has enough room, and it's going to be this way. And, but really to find that outlet, whether it's through music, whether it's through, painting, taking a walk, doing meditation, paying attention to your breathing, mindfulness, whatever the situation is. But I think you gave me a very valuable um, tool, a thought process to say to myself, I just don't have enough space for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, right now, I don't have the bandwidth for it. I don't have the emotional intelligence for it. I'm not mature enough for it. And then, as you said, after I go through all that and I throw my little tantrum, but I find my space, then I can go back and I can be like, you know what? It's okay. You were okay. So I like the fact that you said afterwards, give yourself a little bit of grace. You're a human being, and we're all trying, So, um, again, so many questions, but I want to ask you, this battery is starting to run low. So, Candice, if you could give one message, if you could, if the spirit is on you and you get a message for it, that's fantastic. If you just have a personal message, if you have a message through experience or what you learned as a medicine person, if you could tabulate all of that together, and you had to give just this one download, it was you that was giving the download, and you're giving it to all those people out there that get that watch this video, or even just that one person, of all of your experience, what you've learned, what you see, how you've been helping people, what would that really distilled message be?
Yeah, so what I'm getting right now is that there are so many people in this world that want to change the world, right? There's so many of us that have the call, that feel the draw, the pull, the impulses to change the world. And based on everything that we've discussed, I hope that everybody can gather so much that this experience is an outer expression of our inner reality, right?
Yes.
So if we want to save the world, the easiest way and the most impactful way for us to do that is to save ourselves, period. But mind, body, soul complexes. You save yourself and you choose to heal every single day, choosing to see the lessons, you know, choose to see the lesson in every experience and see our contrast as an opportunity to guide us into what it is that we want to experience more of or what we want to experience less of. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to ourselves, you know. And people sometimes they'll say, oh, the world would be so much better if everybody would just this and this and this and this. Well,
Really?
actually, the world would be amazing if everybody would just mind their own business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Heal themselves and, release and remove all judgment.
Yes.
Right? Because if we all heal ourselves inside, then our outer reality will have absolutely no choice but to reflect that back towards us.
Right. Yeah, it's a such an interesting that's I got a lot of that today, of like you just continuing to bring it back to just the inner journey that we're all having. And and you work a lot with Reiki, and we didn't really get to cover too much of that. But I did have one question also. When people, we all seem to be getting into each other's energy, right? So there seems to be these, particularly family situations, in our communities, close knit communities, groups of people. When you feel someone's energy come in and you can't shake it, or you can't, what process can we do? Let's say we're trying to be at a slightly higher consciousness level, and there's somebody that's not at a consciousness level, or they don't want to be at that consciousness level, right? But you feel entangled with their energy, and you don't want to be somebody that just says, nope, I'm not going to be around, because maybe they will elevate at some point, who knows. But in terms of relationships, how do you healthily separate energies? It feels like energy to me. I mean, there is the relationship, which is a thought, and then there's the relationship, which I believe is an energetic, particularly if you've been around somebody for a long period of time. So what is the way to healthily remove yourself from those vibrations, from those energies, without causing any damage? Because I look back at myself 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and I see that when I detached myself from relationships, the only thing I knew was the destructive path. You talked about that person that's just that dark energy that's just like, I was going to tear shit up, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm learning, but I don't know how. That is my operating system. My operating system is, when relationships are over, it's because they're burned to the ground. Like there's just nothing left. And in your opinion, or through your experience, how does one go through that process of being able to separate in this reality where we have so many connections, to be able to separate in a healthy way, where it's beneficial to your journey, and not just more things you have to forgive yourself for, or mistakes that you've made and have patience for, and all these different types of things?
Yeah. So one thing that I do is um, ultimately, just remember that I want to show respect to everybody, and that includes myself, right? So within that, I choose to only engage or interact with certain energies if it feels resonant with me and it feels like there's an equal exchange.
Mm.
So, and even within my marriage, like we're in the middle of a divorce even, but like we're still working through things. We don't just give up, right? But there were times when I was done. I'm like, I'm done, and whatever that was, I'm done with that. I'm cutting it off because it's not healthy for me. And there's a way that I would do my best to communicate from a respectful place, but just set those boundaries and say, look, this situation isn't helpful. It's not healthy for me. And I have to show myself the same love and respect that I would ask somebody else to show themselves. Right.
Mm. Yeah.
And advise myself just like I would my best friend, and be like, hey, this person is draining from you. This person is taking advantage of you. This person is this and this and this, you know, and allow yourself to set those boundaries and have respect for yourself without feeling guilty or ashamed, because that again is fear-based programming.
Mhm.
Is it comes in and says you can't just cut somebody off. You can't do that. That's shameful. That's You should feel remorse and regret that decision, because what if they change, and that's the thing, is that what I've found through even friendships is that when someone resonates with me on an energetic level, we'll be in the same place at the same time. We'll
Yeah.
talk on the phone more. Whenever we're not resonating with each other, we aren't in each other's space. And it just happens that way. And then it's also understanding that there are going to be these moments where you're separated from people in your life for your own development or for theirs. And it
Yeah.
also depends on, if you're the one who's setting the boundary, if they're the one, who's setting the boundary, whichever way it goes, we all have the right to protect ourselves and our energy and choose what we want to engage with, what we want to experience. So if someone is choosing to not, respect us, then we have to be the ones to respect ourselves and say, you know what, I need to take a break from this. I need to separate, because in that moment of separation, they have an opportunity to miss your energy,
Mm.
right? And then if they truly miss your energy, they'll do the things and take the steps necessary to get that attention or energy back into their life. And that happens with me with family members also. When I don't feel like my energy is respected or reciprocated, I just pull back. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything. You just pull your energy back and just protect it, and then be honest and authentic. If someone says something to you, say, hey, I noticed that you're pulling your energy back. And that is the perfect stage that is set for you to have a conversation, right? And express and potentially educate them on energy exchange and what it means to be in a relationship that is reciprocal in nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's it's a tough one because depending on your type of trauma, and I think everybody goes through trauma. I don't think you can make it to where you make it without having some things happen in your life that you didn't want to happen in your life, right? Um, if you have abandonment issues, if you have, codependence, if there's a lot of different types of things, then you really don't want that. That's just not a choice that you don't want to find the answer to, right? So when I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this separation, I'm going to pull my energy away, and if they really miss my energy, then they will change, or they will do this, or they'll do that, and then their energy does not shift and it does not change, right? Which then triggers internally, like, I'm not good enough. And as I'm going through all of these different changes, and as I'm learning about childhood trauma, reparenting, loving myself, really having a understanding of my worth, it's much easier. It's so much easier. But I'm going to say 5 years ago, it's a living hell because you'll spiral into depression. You will start to really believe that you are not worthy. And for whatever reason, however the process happened, I got through the process, but you get to that point where you may stay in a relationship for 5 years, 10 years, knowing that you're not getting the validation you need, knowing you're not getting the love that you need, knowing that you're not getting everything out of it that you deserve. And that's such a complex that we have, or at least that I have. I'm talking about me and the mouse in my pocket, but that we have where we really believe that we're not worthy of love, And so that's why I say I love the messages that you have. They are so inspirational. Um, you know, However they come, wherever they come from, it's always good to be reminded that we're not alone, that that even though we don't know people, that energy can be shared, and it can be shared from 10 months ago, right? It's so wild. It's like, so like, this is just wild that I could watch something from 6 months ago and it resonates with the thing that I'm doing today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that. I actually come across some of my own videos at times and
yeah.
I'll watch them. Yeah, because it's like I'm just a person too having this experience. And it's like, although I did the medicine walk and I've, been learning the things, you can know something and not truly understand it if you
Yeah.
don't experience it or put that knowing into practice, right? So it's like I'm still experiencing lessons that I've channeled information about. I might have had a small understanding even in that moment, enough to articulate it, but not to the depth that I do now, even.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. I love that. And I still watch videos that pop up. It might be a daily energy read that pops up one day from 2 years ago on someone's random channel I've never heard of. And I'm like,
Right.
yep, that's it for today. I don't know why, but that's the message.
Yes. And that's
And
so,
there's something in there for us.
it's really weird because I think sometimes it's this YouTube algorithm with hashtags, and it's completely random, and because I watched this video, of course it's going to send me this video, but it's not that. It's not that. I and even if it is, like, what way would spirit use? Why would spirit not use that as a way to reach somebody, right?
Yeah,
Actually having
for
those
sure. It's
but
available tool and available. Yeah, it's
yes,
like it's already available to us. Why not just, yeah,
yes.
exactly.
And the profoundness of what it is you're saying, I think, reaches different levels, because everybody has their own level of and their own filter of what they're seeing things through, right? But you will say certain things and it'll just go like, yes, like, why? Yeah, spirit is telling you, like, you got this. Like, what the hell are you waiting on? And part of me, the fear part is going like, don't listen to that. Don't that, and then but there's another part that comes in, and that other part goes, nope, that's validation.
Yep.
That's validation, right?
Yep.
You're just fear. You're pretending we're going to be in danger. We're not in danger. We're not physically in danger. There's not a rattlesnake in the house. You're just making us believe that there could be a rattlesnake in the house. So since there isn't a rattlesnake in the house, I'm going to go to the refrigerator and I'm going to get some cheese, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so I think that process is really cool, that there is this way that we can connect to these other people that are encouraging, they're encouraging us to be our higher self. And as I said before, you're not just some chick, you are extremely profound. I think there's a professor out there that is getting the information and understanding it, and I think there's a taxi cab driver that's getting the information and he's understanding it. And I think somewhere along the line, when that truth comes out, like we talked about before, truth is truth. You're sharing the truth, and sometimes it's a seed when you first video it, and then maybe there's a time 2 months later when you happen to listen to it because it's on your timeline, and then 5 months later when you go, oh my God, I now know what that message was about, right? Like
Yeah.
I now fully embody that, and again, that's carrying that torch, that branch that's on fire. You're not so yeah, I don't know what the right word is, but you're not sitting there like, I have the answer, so listen to the answer, because you're an idiot and you don't get it. You're literally just coming out and you're saying, here's the truth. And I think that that's so needed, in the world where we get so much information. And I try not to get into the negative part or say that it's negative or do this or do that, but there is a lot of information that can lead us into a low frequency, and now there's information that's coming out that can elevate that frequency. And yeah, in my world, which is the only world that really matters to me, you have been an elevator of that information. And I believe that it's that way for the other people, because you read the comments and you see the different types of things, and you're sharing love, you're sharing light, and it's so needed. And I just appreciate, and I thank you for taking the time to have these conversations. And as I said before, and I will say it again, I was at a very it wasn't a physically dark place. It was just a mental place. It was a place where I was just still. And I don't mean still in terms of the still mind. I mean just like not moving. Like I'm just
Right.
not going to move forward. My dad was dying. Relationships were dying around me. The fires had happened. And it was all happening at the same time. Like it was definitely a tower moment of, you know, everything just sort of occurring at the same time. And in that place, I remember feeling like, well, fuck it. You know what I mean? Like, I guess this is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
guess this is what it is. And there were three people that I don't even know why I started watching, to tell you the truth. I have no idea. But there were three people that I started watching videos from. Oh, I know why. Because I was sitting in the car one day and I was just like, man, I don't want to go to work. The fires had just happened in Pacific Palisades. All of my clients, there was no work because everybody had to be evacuated, so there were no dogs there. And the military was there. It was like a month. My dad was dying, so finances were tight, and just all kinds of different things going on. And I remember sitting in the car one day, and I normally watch sports because I'm a Raider fan, so I normally watch sports stuff. And there was this one video by that lady, Erica Enriquez, I think is her name. And it just said, this is a message for you. Don't give up hope. Right. And I was like, okay, I don't know if you've ever done this, but like you're scrolling up and then you pass it and then you
Uh-huh.
go, and then you come
Maybe
back
a little
down to it.
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. You go, you know what? It's better than the efforts, right? So,
Yes.
so I clicked it, and she had this message where she just said, keep going. You've come so far to give up now. Don't look at how far away it is. Look at how far you've come.
Right.
And that video, YouTube, then you had a video. And I remember your video was you were just like, you are such a beautiful soul, and you're doing well, and spirit says you're doing well, and it may not look like it. And I just remember sitting there going like, okay, it was like the tank is empty and you get a quarter tank, right? You get a quarter tank and you can move again, right?
Yes.
And so yeah, so you keep on. I know you're going to anyways, but I'm just saying, you do make a huge difference. And even in your early videos, like I said, you make a huge difference. And I truly appreciate what you did for me, what you're doing now, and I know what you're gonna continue to do moving forward.
Yes, thank you so much. I love to hear that. I mean, who doesn't like to feel appreciated for their efforts, you know? And like you said, I don't do anything for any other reason other than I just feel led to do it, you know? And not only though am I doing it to help other people, but I'm helping myself through this process also because
Yeah,
I've been able to align myself with people like you and many others that are experiencing the same things that I am. So I'm not only creating a support system for everybody else, but a support system for myself, you know? And it's just being willing. It just takes the willingness
yeah,
to want to feel better, you know? Like I feel like that's where it starts. You're just like, man, I just want to enjoy my life.
yeah,
I want to be healthy. I want to
yeah,
I want to enjoy this experience here, you know? And so we begin to see our own worth and our own value. And then once we begin or at least take that step to be willing to find our value or to see our value, then we align ourselves with messages like that, you
yeah,
know? And it was
yeah,
like that happened because you were willing to receive the message, you know?
yeah,
And that's the beautiful thing is like our free will here. And all we have to do is just be willing to make the changes and do the things and get out of the self-sabotaging stagnancy
yeah.
and like paralysis of analysis, you know, and not taking any action.
Right.
So I love it. I love being here and talking with people who understand, you know, because in
Yeah.
my everyday life I'm the weirdo that
Right.
says a bunch of crazy things, and then, you know, later people will come back and be like, you know, you sounded a little crazy when you said that, but I think I understand what you were getting
Yes.
to.
That's what I'm saying. I think you're hitting it. I think truth, I mean, because that's the thing is truth hits at all levels, right? It's not, it doesn't care how rich you are. It doesn't care how much education you have. It doesn't care. It's just truth, right? And so when truth comes down, and the truth of the matter is that love is the highest frequency, that we are all worth and we are all worthy of love. We're all worthy of our own self respect. But I think some people, myself included, like I said, I can just look back at myself months ago. They just don't believe that, and um, they really do need some support, you know, and
Yes.
being that black sheep, you know. But again, I look at it now like I'm just a commando, and you're a commando, right? You're a sniper. You're the daughter of a sniper, and the bottom line is we're killing the shadow, and we're killing those self-limiting thoughts, and
Hmm.
we we can't do it alone. You know, a sniper doesn't just go out there alone. He's got a group of people that if he gets into a problem, you know, they send in the little military, the, you know, whatever, the rest of the guys, and that's what it boils down to, is that we are behind enemy territory. That's okay, you know, because we're highly skilled, you know, we understand the terrain. And this isn't the first rodeo. You know, it may seem like it, but in the last life and the life before that and the life before that, you know, we got closer and we got closer and we got closer. And so, you know, I see it that way today. I don't see it as I'm a black sheep or I'm crazy or these people don't think this. I'm able today to really feel like it's my truth, and it's important, you know, and I can protect it and I can defend it, you know. So, anyways, again, I do appreciate this conversation, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate everything that you've done. So, thank you so much for doing this.
Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you. I hope we can have more conversations because I
yeah,
know
absolutely.
that, I mean, I'm an open book.
Yes. Well, like I said, the crazy thing is we had written down those questions, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, we're gonna ask this question, this question. But as you answered the first question, it's like, oh, wait a minute, boom, 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 right? Like I need to know because I am tenacious, like I want to understand. And sometimes it's to a detriment, but at other times I just can sit there and be like, whoa, wait a minute, she just went this way, right? And that is so interesting. And I know that I want to stay here because it'll fit into this little window of time or whatever it is. But there's that part of me that's like, okay, drop the rucksack, take this off, take that off, just have some water, your knife, whatever. We got to go up that mountain,
Right.
but that's that explorer in me, and that's the person that wants to ride the edge of that wave, right? And see where it goes.
Yeah.
So no, definitely, like I said, I would love to have more conversations, and because I always have questions. I have a question, even I know we've taken up a ton of your time, but even with things like overcoming habits, right? So when the fires happen, when my dad, all of these different types of things, I could find myself getting into these habits, eating and drinking soda, you know, which I can go for a very long time without doing. I usually drink water, I do, but I just got, I could, because I wasn't in a place where I had the energy, I had to find an artificial energy. And that was the only way that I was going to move. So I don't look back on it and just go like, oh, you piece of shit. I don't do that. I just kind of look at it when my mind understands like, oh, I needed that fuel, even though it wasn't premium fuel. You know,
Right.
it ran the engine, right?
Well, that's the thing about like nothing's good or bad. It's what you do with it, you know? So it's like, it's some of
Yeah.
these coping mechanisms, it's not that they're good or bad, it's just sometimes they serve us in a moment to get us through something, and then later it might not serve us anymore, you know, and that's where we truly want to be, is where we don't have to rely on these coping mechanisms, but they're
Yes.
there whether they're healthy or not, and they get us to the next point, then they serve a purpose, you know, so it's something that should be respected also, you know,
Yeah.
and that's where the grace comes in.
So how do you like, what would you just say, stay in, because I tried, because now I've tried, like I'm like, I'm not drinking any soda today, and I will go days where I'm doing fine, and then all of a sudden one day I'll wake up, I'll be low energy, and I'll be at a gas station, and I'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna have a Coke, right? And God, it's like, it's so it's so frustrating because I'm like, no, I don't need a Coke. Like I feel good. I have energy now. Like I understood it then. I
Yeah.
clearly understood it then. And again, I love what you said, which is that it is beneficial. It is something that I need at that particular time. And if I can then, like you said in the very beginning of this conversation, if I can learn from it, right? Because if I learn from it, it's not a bad thing. It's just an experience.
Right.
But there's that nagging, like I should be able to just not drink Coke, period. Right? Like
Right.
just stop it, period. And so there's something there. There's something that I'm not looking at. There's something, and I guess what you've been saying in this whole conversation is just look at it, right? Just look at
Yeah.
it, learn from it.
Yeah, and
But
just give yourself permission to be a human, you
yeah,
know? Give yourself permission, because I do that like with coffee. I do that with candy, you know? Like there's so many things that I will consume that are not the healthiest or the best or whatever, but it's
yeah,
everything is in moderation, you know? It's everything's in moderation. Is a candy bar going to hurt me if I have one once a week? No, I really don't think so. You
right,
know?
right,
Is like that bag of Skittles going to help me if I have it once a week? Or even once a month? I don't think so. You know, it's
yes,
like sometimes we can have these experiences and indulge in the fun, you know, just being a human and having these experiences. But it's just like knowing that you're doing it because you want to versus doing it because you're trying to escape something,
yes,
relying on it, you know, and not having that moderation, you know.
I think that's my point is I recognize now that there is something there. Have you ever seen Pauly Shore doing Richard Simmons?
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
you haven't.
I had to
Have
think
you?
about it for a second. Yes.
It's called The Jester or something like that. Joker or The Jester or something. And there's this guy and he's kind of overweight. He's going to eat the donut. And then Richard Simmons comes along and he's like, can I have a piece of that donut? And he bites the donut and he's like, what? You think that I don't eat donuts? And
Yeah.
then he's like, I had to learn to love every part of myself, even the 300-pound version of myself. So
Hmm.
every once in a while, I give him what he needs, what he wants, a little piece of the donut, right? And
Yeah.
like, you're beautiful, you're special, so I think, yeah, it gives me a different
It's
perspective.
almost like paying homage to that version of yourself,
Yes,
paying
yes.
respect, and
And you
yeah,
just brought that up in my mind where I'm like, okay, if I'm not drinking 10 Cokes, why am I feeling bad for not being able to cut Coke out of my life altogether?
yeah,
Right?
because it's fun and tasty, and who doesn't like a nice
Yes.
cold Coke sometimes? Like,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, but you're
Yes.
not relying on it to fill a void in your experience. You're using it to amplify, or like you said, pay homage or respect to a version of yourself that needed it, or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I think sometimes we're just also so programmed to, especially within the spiritual community, to just be straight edge and
Right.
off
Eating
quickly.
rice,
And
eating only rice, like bland
yeah, and
rice
just,
and broccoli.
yeah, it's so unrealistic, and that's the thing too that a lot of us deal with is unrealistic expectations that have been placed on us in our life, and then expanding out of that and
Yeah.
freeing ourselves of these unrealistic expectations of being a human here and not wanting to experience a nice tasty Coke on a hot summer day,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, I think it's important for me to understand it's a nice Coke on a summer day. It's not I'm dealing with too much stress from a decision that I have to make with a client, so I'm drinking a Coke, right? And
yeah,
there's that understanding, and again, you've talked about it over and over again. It's just recognizing those patterns. Are we above that place where we refuse to look at it and mechanically use something in order to shut it out, or are we consciously aware it's no longer a crutch, it's just something that we're having as an experience, which I think is that's the difference between addiction and somebody just enjoying a glass of wine, right? The person enjoying
yeah,
a glass of wine and the addict are completely different. This person is doing it to enjoy something, and this person is doing it to not suffer, right?
right,
And so and so there are a number of things. I mean, I love the concept of being able to mentally create more space in my mind, for problems, and to be mentally aware of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and then making those choices. And if I don't, not beating myself up, recognizing that, okay, I don't have to get
yeah,
100% on the test, right? Like, I just
yeah,
need a C, right? I
yeah.
just need
Sometimes we make choices, and then we just get to see how we feel afterwards.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like maybe one day you'll get to the point where having that Coke just doesn't hit the spot and it's not
yeah,
fulfilling anymore. And then you'll get to the point where you're like, mm, it happened enough where it actually didn't fulfill anything for me. So I think I'm just gonna not. I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point because trust me, I like Coke. I don't drink sodas very often either, but
yeah,
I'm not going to deny myself an
right.
opportunity because somebody in the spiritual community told me that if I have a soda, it's gonna seal off
Poison.
my pineal gland and I won't be
Yeah,
able
yeah,
to
yeah.
like it's
Right.
just those extremes. Like they're just
Yes.
always everything comes down to balance and
Yes.
then giving ourselves grace because that's the one thing that any religion, especially church, is like, oh God, the grace of God and God's so graceful and all this stuff. And it's like, if we are God, we should be showing ourselves that grace, period. If
Yeah.
If we are God and God is gracious and great and graceful, then should we not give ourselves that same energy, right? And
Yeah.
allow ourselves to just have experiences until the point where it no longer fulfills us and then it just falls away. But it opens up space for a new experience, you know?